experts. So I just want to welcome you all here. Thank you very much for coming. We're delighted to host the Selenium gathering today. So basically, I'll just say a little bit about us as an introduction. We're a software development consultancy. We work off an associate model. So that means that most of the people who work with us are contractors. I'll be here for the whole evening. So if you want to have a chat with me, discreetly if you wish, about any opportunities, do get in touch. All right, over to you, Mark.
Hello. My name is Mark Collin. I'm a consultant. I work with Equal Experts, hence the Equal Experts logo. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about problems that you might have in your tests. So when you're issuing your tests, generally speaking, you'll write a bunch of tests, you'll check that they work on your local machine, all looks good, and then you commit your code, you push it to your central repository, your CI job kicks off, all of a sudden you get a failure. So, what's the problem? Lots of people say to me, why are things going wrong? What's happened? Generally, it's a wait problem. So what's happened is, on your local machine, there was no latency. When your test ran, the page loaded up instantly, each element on the screen, it was all fine. When you start doing this against a remote server, suddenly you've got some latency that comes into play. When the latency comes into play, the elements don't quite render on the screen as quickly as they would with your local machine. And things suddenly start to go wrong, your tests flicker, and you don't really know why. So I think, generally speaking, most of the cases are wait problems. And if you've got a wait problem, what do? Always start playing the waiting game. So what's the waiting game? The waiting game is, how do I work out that all of the elements that I want to see are on the screen? The obvious thing, you use some WebDriver timeouts. Not quite timeout like that. That's one for chocolate bar. But instead, we want some timeouts like this one. Technology.
Just like it's a weekend.
There we go. So, if you've got a Selenium object, your driver or WebDriver object, there's 3 sorts of wait that you can set in your WebDriver object. The first one's a page load timeout. Most people probably never go near this one. The default wait page load timeout for a WebDriver object is infinite. So WebDriver will wait until your page is loaded. Once your page is loaded, that will carry on doing its thing. If you want to make sure your page loads in a specific time, so 15 seconds, you could set a page load timeout. And then when you try and load a page, WebDriver will throw an error if your page is loaded in that time. Generally, people don't bother with that. So you probably haven't seen this one at all. Yeah, for that. The next one is a script timeout. Again, something people don't generally see. WebDriver allows you to execute JavaScript. So you can pass a driver object into a JavaScript executor, and you can send JavaScript which works straight away, or you can send asynchronous JavaScript which does some work and provides a callback to Selenium. What a script timeout is it tells you how long to wait for that asynchronous script to do its job before it tells Selenium it's finished and gives you the result. If you set your script timeout for 30 seconds and it tries to do its job and it doesn't get itself back to Selenium in 30 seconds, you get an error, otherwise it will work fine. Again, let's use JavaScript executed quite a lot before you've seen that one. And the final one is an implicit wait. So the implicit wait, when you set up a driver object, it will start waiting for elements to appear on the screen. So if you're trying to find an element, for example, and you set an implicit wait for 15 seconds, you'll wait up to 15 seconds for that element to appear. All of the implicit waits are that they're evil. So why are they evil? Well, the first thing they do is they slow your text down. Let's imagine I've got a website that's got a login form. I put my username, I put my password, and I log in, and I get logged into the site. Now, we had a problem with our form. We had a login live where we logged in, and it said we logged in, but it didn't get rid of the username and password field. So we modify our test so it checks that when we log in, the username and password field disappear. That's quite sensible, yeah? No? Well, if it's a single page app where it's mirroring the screen, you might not necessarily be on the same page. So we want to be sure that that username field and that password field is there. So we've got a check that says, let's check that that username's not there and that password field is there. The problem is you've set the implicit wait for 15 seconds. So Selenium is going to sit there, wait for 15 seconds to see this user disappear. And then it's going to sit there on 15 seconds for the password field before it realizes it's not there. So you've now, by putting this implicit wait 15 seconds to the test, and an extra 30 seconds to just the logging section of the test. If you take this across all of your tests, you're having lots of time. You could possibly triple the time it takes the test to run, and that's a bad thing.
That doesn't happen if you're doing find elements rather than find elements.
No, well, I think it will for find elements because it still waits for the time 15 seconds, but it doesn't throw an exception for your find elements. Yeah.
You can capture that.
Exactly. You can capture the exception, but why do that? Well, that's a code smart. Why would you have an exception with a series of tests when you can just run code with exceptions?
But still, the point being that you would have waited already.
Yeah, you still get 15 seconds.
You have to wait for the exception to throw. It's still wait that amount of time.
Whereas element present Selenium one, we'll keep more deprecated
If you want to better ways of
7
doing
years
it.
out of that code, that's fine, but I wouldn't use that if I were you. So the second problem with implicit waits is it's not always obvious that it's been set. If you've got your WebDriver object and you're using the WebDriver object, there's nothing on it that tells you there's an implicit wait set. If you've got code that has lots of different page objects and of course it can go all over the place, an implicit wait can be set at any one of these points because when an implicit wait is set, it's set for the life of the driver object. That means until you close your browser down and start a new driver object, it's going to be there. So it's very hard if you're coming to a team where there's a bunch of tests already written to know that someone's putting implicit wait on this driver object. And that's how you start time for a real reason. And back to the third one. They're left over bank in Selenium 1. When the WebDriver API was initially implemented, it didn't have any implicit waits. There were people that were raising bugs and complaining about it, and for about 3 or 4 months, the Selenium developers actually batted all those bugs back and wanted to do this. The problem was so many people wanted to see these because they were so used to Selenium API. They eventually came and said, okay, we'll do it. We don't think you should use it. We think you should know what's on the screen, but if you want to go down there, you go over there. Yeah. So, evil, don't use them. Okay, but I want to use them.
Not necessarily. I just said the function with the exception and call it is element present.
Well, if you want to use them, you can use them. Okay? I don't think you should, but you can. There's a few things to remember. So, as I said before, when you set a wait on the driver element, it's going to be there for the driver element. You can reset it, so you can set it to wait 15 seconds, do a check, and set it to wait back to 0 seconds, but you've got to keep track of it. So, the other thing is, you want to try and make it clear in your code that you're doing this. Maybe you want to put a WebDriver object, WebDriver object, something like this. So, I guess, what should we do? Anyone got any idea? Explicit waits, there you go. So, explicit waits, I've seen this before, they're wonderful. You can create an explicit wait for individual conditions. So, right here we're finding an element and we're doing an explicit wait that waits until the page button is visible. So in this case, say you have a website where you're paying for something or a shopping cart, and you've got to put in some details before the page button becomes visible or enabled. You can put an explicit wait that waits for 15 seconds, checking every 5 milliseconds. When it's available, you've got a pay button. This would return the element, so you can just it directly. And as I'm showing just in here, there's a predefined set of expected conditions in Java. So they're all a bunch of these things for you. You can wait for the visibility of things, the invisibility of things, you can wait for things to appear in the DOM, to away from the DOM, all sorts of things. You're not stuck with explicit waits. You've also got a float wait API. So explicit waits are built around the float wait API. It looks very similar because it is very similar. WebDriver waits are wrapped around this. So here you can be a little bit more explicit. So we're being very explicit what time it is, we're being very explicit what the call is, and we can specify specific exceptions that we want to ignore. So in the previous one that we saw, we were waiting for an element to become visible. The problem is, if you haven't found the element, it'll throw no such in the found exception. In this case, we can catch that exception and ignore it because we know we haven't found the element yet. It's probably different. So this just gives you a little bit more readability. You can wait for predicates or functions. A predicate returns a boolean, and a function just returns anything. So quite easy. And that gives you a lot of power.
Is the Fluent Wait API available in multiple languages?
It's what WebDriver Wait's based around, so I believe it's in every language, but obviously different WebDriver languages. I don't know if it's every single one, but it should be one of the main ones like Java, C#, Ruby. Yeah, it should be everyone. So what's the do with your explicit waits? Pretty lots of things. Distance, visibility, and visibility. You can wait for them to stop and start moving. So you can take the position of an element, and you have a function that checks where it is every couple of seconds. If the position to move, you can wait for that to stop moving and that element to stop moving. So maybe you've got a form where you fill in some details and it scrolls and looks down, and then asks you to continue. This will give you the ability to find out when that scroll down is finished, so you can start clicking. You can check for alerts, so JavaScript alerts will pop up, alerts or case. You can check for JavaScript books, you can check for JavaScript values, JavaScript executions. You can pretty much do anything you want. So very, very powerful. Unfortunately, we do have some noting aspects as well. Not everyone wants to use implicit weights, and not everyone wants to use implicit weights. Some people have been told don't use implicit weights, do something else. So they try and work around the problem. And you've got something like this. So we also code here that there's a class called relevant lookup. As a constructor, it takes a selector and it's got a timeout. So what we're doing here is we're basically configuring implicit weight. To use some code like this, you'll have to wrap something like a find element call, which is horrible because someone's going to use your code base and they're going to start find element. And all of the normal functions that they'd see in the API aren't there. It's very confusing. So here's an example of someone's written their own web element lookup class, they've written their own find element class that uses the web element lookup class, and then they're using that in their page object. This is code I've written for this presentation. This is code that I've actually seen in the real world. People do this. It's a surprisingly common, and it's very scary. If you see this, it's totally fair. Please do not do that.
Even worse than .NET. Is that people wrap the original method so you never see because you can accidentally and it's awful.
So yeah, that's our first anti-pattern. Don't write your own wait framework. The second one, mixing your waiting strategies. So you've been very good. You've written explicit waits, and let's go back to our original example of the login form. Let's say the login button doesn't appear until you've typed in the password. Yep. What we do is we type in our username, we type in our password, and then we write an explicit wait that waits for our login button to become visible. Our expectation is 5 seconds because it's links on the page. So we write our explicit wait, and we run our test, and our test fails. Quite confusing. We go and we put our test running locally. Username gets filled in. After it gets filled in, the button appears. The driver just sits there for about 15 seconds and then dies. You'll keep your head there. The problem is somebody set an implicit wait of 15 seconds. So when you have an explicit wait, it calls a standard wait function, which is then using the implicit wait, which is a 15 seconds wait. So your explicit wait says, I want to find out if it's there, so it's here. WebDriver goes off and says, there's an implicit wait set. I'm going to wait up to 15 seconds to see if that one's here. In the meantime, your explicit wait is still doing what it should be doing. And after 5 seconds, it says, I've looked for the response, I'm going to fail. it's very, very hard to find out when this is happening. And I've sat there for half an hour before going, what's going on. Please don't mix your weight strategy. Very, very careful. Third one. Everyone's seen this. Good old Fred.sleep. Does the old machines fast? Does the build terms fast? Does it mean somebody else's machine is fast? The problem is you've got to explain to people why this is bad. So a few years back, I worked on a team where we had a guy who joined us, and he picked Fred.sleep for his code base. And it wasn't always obvious because we weren't checking the other bits to the So we'll find out because our CLI go will start flickering. Because that'd be a hard-coded weight, and it would work fine with the machine, but when the CI server runs around, it will take a little bit longer to do everything. I think we'll start failing. And you can't use Fred.sleep, just don't use it at all. But so we thought, we can cover about this. We'll put an SVN code base. If somebody tried to commit some code, which would affect Fred.sleep commit, we'll reject commit. Right. That fixed problems for about a week. Problem was, we'd gone to a different strategy instead. We'd gone object of delay. He didn't understand why we were telling him not to do Fred.sleep. We had to sit him down and explain it in detail. So if you do tell people not to do specific things, always explain why. They'll find a way around it and they'll break the stuff all the same way. That's why not. Fred.sleep.
I use it all the time.
You shouldn't use it because if I've got a nice fast if I want them to build my machine and it takes my machine half a second for that code to render itself, even JavaScript and anything else, that's great. If I pull in some 10-year-old Windows machine that's got a Selenium in it, it's probably going to take about 3 or 4 seconds for that same page to render all the JavaScript because it's sort of very browser. 96, let's say. And while it works on my machine, it's never going to work on that machine because the JavaScript is really slow, the machine's not as powerful. So we need to wait explicitly for something to happen rather than blindly guessing it.
But you say it's a third.
Oh, you could do that, but then you're slowing your test down. Your tests that are going to take 2 hours to run, you'll test it in 5 minutes. So I've been telling that everything's a weight problem. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe that's standard, but it's exceptional problem. So, who's come across this before? And have you managed to fix it with weight? Nope. Good. So, first of all, let's talk about what it is. I don't know if you can know this. Think of a web element as a reference to something that's slightly wrong. So it's a bit like a phone system. Matt's sitting over there. If I want to call Matt up, I'll dial his phone number in, and I can talk to Matt, that's fine. If I destroy Matt, I create another copy of Matt, who has a different phone, it looks exactly the same, that's the brother movie. If I then try to talk to Matt's twin brother, I'm not going to get anywhere because I've still got Matt's phone number. This is kind of what it is with elements. When we have elements in the DOM, a web element is just a reference to something. If we remove that thing that we've got a reference to, the reference is still pointing to it, even if it's not in the DOM. So if I replace it with something else and I can't talk to this new thing, I'm still talking to the old thing. Does that make sense? Kind of? So it's a bit like a telephone system. A web element isn't really a web element. A web element is just a reference to something in the document. So how do you fix this? Well, if you go to the Selenium mailing list, you'll find hundreds of opportunities to use explicit ways to fix their references. It's never going to work. The reason it's stale is because you're talking something that doesn't exist anymore. People do have limited success with putting weights in because they've probably waited a little bit longer for the originality to destroy itself and the new one to come in its place. And then they're talking to the new one. It's just your luck. The weight didn't fix its element. It's exceptional. How do we fix it? We find it again. Simple. So I basically said that you can't use weight to element reference exceptions. Is that entirely true? Well, not quite. If you know that you've got an element in your DOM and it's going to get destroyed at some point, you could set an explicit wait that waits for that element, that web element to become stale. When that web element becomes stale, you've got a pretty good idea that you want to liberate it. At that point, it becomes a new element. So you can still use them in waits. You've got to think about what you're doing. So that's it for me, really. There's no other questions.
With your last point,
Yep.
I use a lot of app find by Java, and sometimes I get stale elements. Is it best not to use app find by use a best
App find by should find the element every single time unless you're using app category computation. If you're finding it every time, you're really, really unlucky because you're basically getting a tiny gap between when it's found the element and it's supposed to be with it. That's really bad luck, basically.
Website says, is it poll? Is it refresh like every 5 seconds?
It's very rare sometimes.
It potentially doesn't take the new my experience. I got users. I shy away from the empire because of the scenario. I prefer to have one single happen to you all rather than
And what you can do is if you know that always happens on a certain transition, you could explicitly wait for something to stale because that says that something in the environment is being destroyed and you get. So it's chatting with developers and finding out how that feeds in itself, how it works, and working through it. The title there, there's not a huge amount of things to do. We're just very unlucky. Sorry.
So you got that. That's a separate question.
So in my experience, just as in addition to these weights, what I tend to build around these weights and what I feel that it's lacking from those weights, it's what to do. So it's polling every half a second, but it's not actually doing it. So, and it will still wait for the 15 seconds. Let's say you have, before your wait for, you have a backing call that sets up something, which it's asynchronous, so you just end up going to the wait for. But that backend call hasn't finished yet, so your page will never render the element. So you keep on waiting for that element, but you're not actually doing anything. So in order to elicit something, you need to do an extra action on the page. Something like either refresh the page or click on a tab or something that will just get that content from the backend onto the page. So what I feel is missing from the wait for is something to do after the polling time. So after half a second, do something else. It would solve a lot of intermittency in terms of race conditions. And that's still exception as well.
So I guess one of that is that you can write the expected conditions to everything you want. So
Yeah, exactly. But it's adding that extra action.
so you'd want to know it fails. So
Yeah, but if it's intermittent,
when you write your predicate function, you could make your function refresh the page.
yeah, definitely. That's what I'm saying. But
Oh.
you haven't added that.
No,
And I'm
so I
saying in my
the way you
experience.
create a predicate function, you can do anything you want. That's perfectly
I was just trying to say it out loud that it solved a lot of intermittency for me, even that still exception stuff. Because you're just going to wait, and if nothing happens, then you're going to time out and that's it.
But you're not going to know that.
But again, if it's a race condition, if your CI is under load and your backend call doesn't end, you have, I don't know, 5 transactions and they don't end and everything's asynchronous. You want to do something extra. And the user, just picture a user going to a website. He gets a timeout, you just refresh the page and get the content immediately.
To me, it sounds like you're going to hide the problem. The problem is that your website isn't responsive enough, and you're going to hide it by doing this week, or potentially make it worse, right?
So that you're testing your app in a server that has shoeloads of other stuff in there. You're not testing performance, right?
Maybe we should take that offline
you
for discussion afterwards and see. Has anyone else got any other questions?
If you've got, say, a product selection and you're going to a page, some products load up faster than others. So how would you go about
setting your weight strategy when certain items and certain pages are the same page, but just the item that you've chosen causes the page to load slower than others.
So it depends, what are you interested in that page? If you're interested in a specific product, you can wait for that specific product to become available. And then
But do you wait for the max, the longest time?
Well, that's
or
kind
do
of
you,
up to you. I mean,
this is why my question, how would you go about this?
So think about how you use the site. Does your user wait for everything to load up, or do they just wait for the little bit that they're interested in to load up and click it? So depending on how you think the user will use the site, you can run the tests appropriately. You can wait for one product to appear, or you can have 10 different explicit waits and wait for each individual 10 products to appear to load.
I mean, in our case,
you can do it, but I don't know what you should do. That's
in our case, we have different clients who people go into, and some clients, because of the sheer size of them, take 30 times as long.
Yep.
Now, do I set the timeout for that an individual element to be for the longest, which is going to therefore extend the time of my test running?
I think one last thing is that, sure, it may load 30 times slower, but what is it on that page are you checking? Are you checking how long it takes to load? Or you go depending on clicking on the first thing or the last thing? What is it?
No, I'm trying to keep my test running.
I can't answer the question because it depends what your criteria is. If your criteria is that your website will load completely in 15 seconds, waiting for 15 seconds.
It's not about that it will be loading in 15 seconds. It's just the fact that certain pages will be dependent on the data that is underlying the system.
I agree, but it's, do you want to check that the entire page loads, or do you want to check that the specific part of the page is loaded? So, depending on what you want, you can write your test appropriately. If you're only interested in one product appearing and being able to click on, even if the rest of the page is loaded, you can write an explicit wait that just waits for that one product to be available. If you want to check that the entire page loads before you do anything, you probably want to write a series of waits, and you'll need to make the wait time how long that's going to take. And how long that takes is, what's correct? I don't know.
Is it a long time or a short time?
Well, if your product owner is happy with your entire page taking 45 seconds to load, that's how you put your wait time to 45 seconds. If you've got a non-functional requirement that says, I want my entire page loaded in 5 seconds, set your wait time to 5 seconds. The page isn't there, you'll throw an error, but that's because your site isn't performing enough.
Are you testing performance?
No, I'm trying to get my test suite through as fast as possible and not be waiting. If there's an error, I don't want to be waiting for, if the element is not ever going to appear, I don't want to be waiting an excessive amount of time for the test
to reframe what Mark said, just wait for what you need. You should know what you need. Otherwise, you've got a certain scenario that you're trying to automate, so you wait for what you need. If you don't need the bottom half of the page, don't wait.
It's the subtlety of the question that it's the same page, but it's different instances of the same page for different clients. And potentially there's a different expectation in terms of what good enough is. And if you can abstract that somehow and kind of have something that deals with that page, how do you then kind of give that thing maybe a different wait time?
Well, you work with the system.
I know what you're talking about.
Well, you can define waits for different tests. So,
I think if he says it's the same action on the same page has many different ways of behaving, and I would abstract that into several different page objects for that page. And your check should know which page you're going to want to interact with. So you only wait for the set amount of time. Why is there more people? I'm not complaining. I'm really confused.
As a second question, Selenium Grid, it's weights. So it has another 5 or 6 weights. Are there, any things that you comment about, the Selenium Grid weights interacting with the WebDriver weights?
Well, I would say if you're going to use weights for Selenium Grid, then
you have to set there are certain weights on your Selenium Grid and timeouts.
So if you are setting specific weights for Selenium Grid and your application corrects in your weights, then things are going to go wrong. And you've got to align your weighting strategies. There's no silver bullet to this. There's no, if you set this, it will always work. Can't really give you more than that because I don't know the problems really. But if your grid is going to be setting weights, say, wait for 20 seconds before it does a return, and you want your test to wait for the grid to do its weight as well, you're going to need to add that waiting time into your weight. That makes sense. Okay, cascading them up.
Yeah, you need to work out what they will. You're talking things like how long to wait with the browser hands before it
Yeah,
goes.
and there's about 5 or 6
I would treat
of
them separately to the weights that Mark's been talking about. Because it depends on your strategy and how long you want to. If you look at the code, they were supersede each other. So if you look at the code base, you can tell which one's more important and which one overrides. So it tends to be that the server ones are lower down the list than the ones that Mark talked about. So they take precedence over the onion one.
So I was one over there? Yeah.
You crossed up page load or wait page load early on, but you didn't say why.
Crossed up. I talked about it.
You didn't say why.
Oh, well, I didn't say you shouldn't use page loads. I said you should use implicit weights. So the page load is entirely separate from implicit weights. So there's 3 types of weight you can send in a object. One's a page load, one's a script timeout, and one's an implicit weight. Page load, if you want your code to load in 15 seconds and you want your workload to load no, it doesn't, your page load to load 15 seconds. Any other ones? Nope, okay. One more.
When you're making
Yes. So,
so is this supported in all
well, if you're so the way Selenium works is Selenium is a client server and it can send lots of JavaScript over to the browser and it can get the browser to execute those bits of JavaScript. Obviously, the browser needs to be able to run JavaScript, so if your browser can't do that, then you need to run it. Most browsers can nowadays. You can take the web browser object and you can cast it to a JavaScript execution and you can send any JavaScript you down and you can tell the browser to execute it. And if you've got some very complex JavaScript callbacks, the asynchronous, the script timeout will give you a length of time that it's going to let that asynchronous script run before it goes in. So the default for that is it expects every script to run instantly and return the response straight away. But if you've got something that's going to sort of give you off into your browser that's around for about 5 seconds, then you can respond to you can set your script time to 10 seconds. So
you are expressing some browser, the rest of the
so if JavaScript's disabled, then it's not going to work. Basically, there's not much you can do about it. Okay?
You mentioned expected conditions in Java.
Yeah.
So we have like 4 of them. And you've got like 20 in Java or something.
I'm aware they're not all there. I didn't spend too long there. Java has got a bunch of them that set up for you. Not all of them are brilliant. There's the visibility of expected condition in Java will throw no such elements exception. So if you've got a web undefined, it'll go wrong. So you're probably best off writing your own version of that.
How many do you write on your own?
I don't normally do them about 4 or 5. Most of the don't do the good for you. But it depends on the version of the exercises and what it's doing. Are there any more? Do you have my hand?
for instead of conditions, like different grades,
Yep.
like you have this grade, what are these for?
So the next condition you can take in whatever you want and you can return whatever you want. So yeah, you can define what they are or you can leave it to generic. It's up to you to define it. Okay. I'm back now because I'm going to take you to
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you would.
I never really had that. You know, like, basically, so, probably basically,
element implementation.
I've never seen that. I've seen
Well, I have had it with like Java something like pages. Something around in the page already done that thing. And you can't reference that element again.